And welcome everyone to Isles Talk. I am your host this evening, Paul Kreischer, and the godfather of all things social media, Islanders social media, Gary Harding is here to join us finally. Now that he's back from his trip from Maui, no one's really, upset with him there. And
No.
of course, yeah, joining us in the chat room at some point is Joe Panettiere. He has not been doing well. Just a little glimpse, ladies and gentlemen. That is Joe right there. Um, we are going to be. There we go. We hope you do feel better, Joe, at some point. But
Absolutely.
ladies and gentlemen, the real reason why we're here, uh, we are going to do our first segment of the Islanders 50 years, and there's no one better to bring on first as our guest, Mr. Jiggs McDonald. Jiggs, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a real treat, a real honor. And Gary and I, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you very much. And Joe's, we thank you very much for coming on.
You're very welcome. Thanks for asking me.
So, the younger Islander fans, and I'll include myself ever so slightly in this one. Hockey in the 70s, gentlemen. The Islanders didn't show up until 73. What was 72, 73? Were they all Ranger fans? Gary, I'm going to go with you first because we know your story, but was everyone a Ranger fan? What was hockey like in the 70s?
It was interesting going, because like I said, I started out following the Rangers in 1969 with my dad at 6 years old. And when the Islanders came about in 72, my dad said, well, why don't we go to some games there? It's easier for us. Obviously, we live right off Hempstead Turnpike. It was a 10-minute drive. Thinking of having to pay $6 for a ticket was a little crazy for him, but we did it. And it was exciting. And again, I think a lot of people that were serious hockey fans at the time, obviously were Ranger fans, and they were saying, well, you got this new product. And unfortunately, we all know the story, 12-60-6 the first season, 30 points. The record for futility until Washington stepped up a few years ago and Flater and blew that away. But it was kind of like, and I didn't see them at the time, but it was kind of like watching the 62 Mets. They were the flops, all the mistakes in the world, all the things that could happen to them. But they were still fun to watch. And, the Coliseum was brand new at the time. It was, a great place to see a game. It always was. And, as the Islanders improved and Bill Torrey improved the team and the players started to come in, a lot of Ranger fans went to the Islanders. My father did. My father told me when I was young, they always root for your team, stay with your team, do whatever. And what did my father do? The year Mike Bossy came to Long Island, he switched sides. He went to the Islanders. He became an Islander fan and then would scream every time the Islanders scored. And I'm like, yeah, so much for loyalty. So
can I just interject here, Gary?
Anytime.
In fairness to Bill Torrey and the original ownership of the Islanders, had they been able to keep all the players that they drafted in that expansion draft, they were really hit hard. Yeah, Atlanta lost a player or two to the WHA, but not nearly the amount of talent that Bill Torrey's team had. So they would have been in my opinion, would have been very competitive out of the gate, not setting that record that you referred to. But that's history. That's ancient history, and goodness knows for the amount of money paid for a franchise at that time compared to what Vegas and more recently Seattle has paid, and look at the talent that they were able to amass just for what, $500 million, and then 650,000 for a franchise that used to cost $2 million. Mm-hmm.
Well, Jig, we're gonna go. Let's segue right into you. You were covering the Atlanta Flames at that time during the 70s. What was hockey like down in Georgia, and what were you hearing about the Islanders?
Well, we were watching the Islanders build a strong hockey team, a fast hockey team, and when they when you go into a draft, and Atlanta drafted Jacques Richard, The Islanders get Billy Harris. Jacques had led the Quebec Junior Hockey League, could hit the net. He couldn't hit the backside of a barn door when he got to Atlanta, became a pro. Then, of course, the second year, Atlanta gets Tom Lysiak. The Islanders get Denny Potvin. That's the benefit of the first and second draft pick automatically. But Atlanta was a market, I guess you could really say, not familiar with pro hockey, and certainly not the National Hockey League. They had a men's league. There was one ice surface in town when the Flames got there. It was starting from the grassroots up. Yeah, there were a lot of people who were working there, Atlanta at that time, and still is. A lot of the Fortune 500 companies and people from all over the northern U.S. at that time. But maybe it was the location of the building. Maybe they just didn't want to get involved with hockey. It was tough to sell a ticket or tickets in Atlanta. The team, basically, individuals went primarily unknown. I had to really, really push to get people to come to games, and television ratings were non-existent, that kind of thing. It was a difficult sell.
Well, Jiggs, obviously you came on board here after the Islanders won their first Stanley Cup in 1980. Just if you could take a minute, like as you said, you spent 7 years in Atlanta. You spent 5 years before that covering the Los Angeles Kings when they came on board with the other 6 teams in expansion. What was your first impressions of what the atmosphere outside of hockey with the Islander organization as opposed to, say, LA and or Atlanta?
I was in a hockey market. I've often said, and I think I've said to you, Gary, that I felt that I was doing missionary work for the game and for the National Hockey League in LA, and certainly in Atlanta, more in Atlanta, teaching the sport, explaining offside, explaining icing as best we could without talking down to those who knew the game and the rule book. None of that. When I got to the island, it was a matter of put your foot to the pedal and do your thing, because you've got a hockey audience that you're dealing with. We started out doing simulcasts, so we had radio and television to deal with together. Surprisingly, here we are 50 whatever years later, and some teams are going back to that, including Los Angeles. Carolina's been doing it. Doesn't make any sense to me. But the market, being with a team that had won the Stanley Cup, the awareness of the franchise, the awareness of how difficult it was to get a ticket to see the Islanders home games. Going into it, first or second Rangers game in the Coliseum was probably 70-30 Ranger fans. And Eddie pointed out to me, Eddie Westfall said, "Jiggs, just remember that without the New York Rangers, there wouldn't be a New York Islanders franchise." And how right, how true.
Yeah, very true. Joe did have one question that I did write down. Is there a call that you wish you could redo?
Probably all but maybe 12 or 14 nothing that in particular stands out. Maybe the Bossy 50 and 50, I could have rehearsed something or been more prepared. It's like doing the game for Sports Channel America when Wayne Gretzky broke Gordie Howe's record. That was the reason I was there, to do that game, but I hadn't prepared anything in case of. I prepared notes. I have stats, things like that, or things individuals that I'd like to get in, but I never once pre-planned an Islanders Stanley Cup win, say against Minnesota or against Vancouver, Edmonton. No, nothing pre-scripted at all.
Just continuing on to the Stanley Cups. I mean, you obviously you walked into a great environment and teams, and actually, just going to make a change to the question. You worked with obviously some great color guys, Eddie especially. all the years you had together. Tell us, actually going back, tell us about some of the color guys you dealt with in your previous places in the 70s.
Probably the more knowledgeable to begin with would be a gentleman by the name of Ed Fitkin. Ed was the first hockey hire by Jack Kent Cooke with the LA Kings. He had worked Hockey Night in Canada, was sports director at CJBC, the CBC radio outlet in Toronto. Very knowledgeable gentleman. When he left the broadcast with me and the hockey department, he went over to the WHA as an executive there. He was followed by Dan Avey, who was just one of the funniest guys I've ever traveled with. But Dan didn't know one side of a hockey puck from the other, or one side of the stick or the curve. And he would tell you that. He was a basketball guy, but enjoyable. Atlanta, we ran through a lot of people. Jim Huber, the late Jim Huber, was with me for a while. And then when Boom Boom Geoffrion had gone to Montreal to coach and was released, relieved of his duties there, came back, he joined me in the booth, and he was just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Great knowledge of the game, not the greatest command of the English language or the pronunciation of words or players' names. But that guy there, the guy, I mean, I shouldn't pick on Boom. We meshed. Eddie was a godsend. I'd known the Westfall family. I'd known his brother George, and what was the other brother's name? Stan. Stan was a referee. George was a player, and there was Howie and the mom and dad. But getting to work with Eddie and his relationship with Bobby Orr and my association with Bobby going back prior to that, we just we had a great relationship. Eddie will tell you that the 15 years together, certainly a lot longer than some marriages last, but I don't know if you guys knew that we were sent to what we would call a marriage counselor, I guess. Sports Channel decided that we weren't acknowledging one another, playing off one another. And that's probably true because we'd heard one another's lines all those years. So they sent us to see Andrea Kirby, and she played a tape and stopped and said, "Did you hear that? Hear what?" That's it. There was nothing. You didn't acknowledge. You didn't play off him. It's like you weren't even at the same game together. We looked at one another and thought, wait a minute. We've been doing this for how long? But she was right. The more we listened to the tape and we had homework, took tapes home, listened, she was absolutely right. We were not meshing, not playing off one another. And it helped. It helped tremendously. But I digress here, guys.
No, you're not digressing at all, right? Oh.
No, this is what we're soaking in here. Favorite Stanley Cup to cover?
Oh boy, probably. Well, as they say, you never forget your first one. First one was special for me. They'd already won the first, as you pointed out. But beating Minnesota and getting, I was primarily doing radio and cable TV at home. Tim Ryan was doing the over-the-air games, Channel 9, and then Tim had to miss several games that season. So I got to do some Stanley Cup final on Channel 9. That was special. But then the following year, when they were almost bumped out of it in the opening round by the Pittsburgh Penguins, being able to come back in that one, being able to come back, beat the Rangers the way they did, some of those runs. But then the actual Stanley Cup final was probably the fourth one was so enjoyable, beating Edmonton. There was just something in my system about Wayne and Mark and that Edmonton, and probably more to do with Slats. There was kind of an arrogance about Edmonton, and you just thought you want to pin their ears back. Even a couple of the writers, a couple of people, not the local broadcasters, but a couple of the national guys who out of Toronto were just so enthralled with this Edmonton team. You just wanted to put them in their place, and the Islanders did, and that was so rewarding. I felt personally, and I think every member of the team did too.
Speaking of that, let me ask you this, because it's always been said, Wayne said it so many times, that after Cup 4, when they walked down that hallway between the Oiler dressing room and the Islander dressing room, they said they saw nothing but ice packs and whatever. But
Yeah.
when I go back and I look at the tape of the end of the 83, when the NHL Network plays those, replays the Cup finals, and you see the locker room celebration after Cup 4, it didn't look the same way that Wayne represented it. Now, you were there. I mean, how true was that? I mean, it didn't look
The
that
video
way.
the video that you were seeing and they were celebrating would be at the same time that the Oilers were getting out of their gear, out of the shower, going on down at the other end of the hallway, Gary. So by the time they had packed up and walked down that hall past the Islander dressing room, things had calmed down considerably. Um, guys did have the ice packs. By the time I got down there, there's an interview that I did with Mike Bossy that I just saw rerun recently. In the background, you can see trainers scurrying around and guys.
No, okay.
There was a time lapse there from the celebration once they got to the room, and Edmonton taking whatever time it took for them to get out of their gear and console one another and leave the building. But Wayne was right. The only way to avoid that would have been to go up the stairs to the right of the dressing room,
Right,
and across the concourse and then back down. And they weren't going to do that with the number of fans that were still celebrating up there.
makes sense. Okay, fair enough. It just didn't seem that way, and maybe that's, again, the perspective that you can give us that not many people will.
When you're in the booth, Jiggs, how much of you is a broadcaster, and how hard is it to keep the fan in you from coming out, or do you have to be both? What's it like being a sportscaster and adding a little bit of that fan, because you're in that dynasty year, you're seeing a lot of winning here. It's for me, it would be very difficult to just be a broadcaster and call that out.
Yeah, it was. And I felt I wrote a fine line. I didn't want to, be a cheerleader waving the pom poms, and I
That's
don't
Boston.
think I was. I think I was down the middle. I tried to be. I consciously tried to be. I promise. One of the best pieces of advice. My very first season, working with the Los Angeles Kings, I approached Danny Gallivan. I'd been a big Danny Gallivan fan doing the Montreal Canadiens games for years, and finally got to meet this gentleman. And he was just a spectacular individual. I asked if there was anything. He said, no, not really. Well, wait a minute, young Jiggs. He said, yeah, never lose sight of the fact that it takes two teams to play the game. Oh, wow. How profound. Never lose sight of the fact it takes two teams to play the game. And I have used that with young guys who have approached me asking for advice. And I think that covers it. It takes two teams. So don't be too heavy on one and overlook the other. If you're with a team that is just head and shoulders so much more talented, and controls the game, like Gary referred to a 12-0 game. Broadcasting that, there isn't a whole lot you can say about the other team, except that they hopefully will get better, that some bad decisions made, puck handling, whatever. But don't jump on them and gloat about your team running up the score to 12-0.
Oh, okay. The overtime call in '82 wasn't down the middle.
Penn's Isles. Give us your memories on that Penn's Isles game there, Jiggs.
The David Volek goal and
no, 82, the first round.
Tonelli.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, when 82, not 93.
We were down.
Not 93. We'll get to 93 in a minute.
Yep. And get it tied up. Go to Oh, should have been over when Mike Bullard had that chance. Would have been to our broadcast left. Oh my goodness. Oh boy. Butch and I have talked about that at dinner a few times in the recent years. He said sitting on the bench, he thought it was over. He said, "Thank God for Smitty. What a what a stop." And maybe some people have told me they thought the puck was going wide, that it didn't. Smitty didn't really have to make a great save. I have looked at it a couple of times, not as much probably as I should have, but to my memory, unbelievable save. Then the play goes the other direction. Game over, lights out, and we move on. But yeah, that the lesson learned there, I think, was really game number 3. That was a best of 5 series, and in game 3, everybody was packed. We walked across the street from the hotel to the arena with our bags going home. There wasn't going to be a game 4 on Sunday night. It was over Saturday night. We were going back to Long Island. Pittsburgh won that game, forced game 4 on Easter Sunday, and the Islanders weren't very good. I mean, going back to the hotel, checking in, your room hadn't been made up. You got most of us, I think, got the same room. Why are we here? They got their butt end kicked on Sunday night, and almost eliminated at home on, I guess it was Tuesday or Wednesday night.
It was a Tuesday night, I think.
Yeah. It just ooh, baby.
Well, we won't go through we know we're going a little further than I think we wanted to, but
right.
I got to bring in, the next great run after all the cups were won and the team had struggled. Al came back, and my favorite team of all, although the cup wins were great, still my favorite team and my favorite situation was 93. Yep. It's also the time when my wife and I started dating, so everything was all coming into place, and that run to me was just so special. Just give us some of your, I know the obvious things, the Volek goal, the Turgeon play, but give us some other little tidbit that either surprised you or you were really excited about during that special run.
Just how much everybody supported one another. That was, there was, without Pierre going into that series in Pittsburgh, without Pierre, the injury, of course, after the Dale Hunter thing, there wasn't any superstar power on that hockey team. It was a group of individuals who played together. Glenn Healy, God bless him, Healy, Flatley, Delgarno, that whole group. Stevie Thomas played a big role in getting everybody on the same page. Guys, if we work together, don't be puck hogs. Move the puck, give the guys open. And of course, the story with David. Al was really upset with David. He would say that David was deaf. He'd nod and say, "Yeah, I understand, coach," and then do the same play, make the same bad move. Was in and out of the lineup. It was unbelievable. At the airport, going to Pittsburgh after the incident with Dale Hunter and Pierre, I sidled up to Al and I said, just hypothetically, if Gary Bettman called and said you could replace Pierre with one player from the Washington Capitals, who would you want? Dale Hunter, without hesitation, never even blinked. Dale Hunter. And I went, what? He just tried to decapitate your best player. He said, yeah, but he'll do anything to win, Jiggs. Anything it takes to win. That's my kind of guy. Whoa. But that series, that was special. And that team, every time you see Mullen, Delgarno, Stevie Thomas, Flats, whoever, great memories. The guys really wanted to play for one another.
Speaking of Al Arbor, fondest moments?
Boy, there's so many.
Any advice he ever gave you?
None. No. And the same with Bill Torrey. Actually, and the same with Cliff Fletcher in Atlanta. No, they never interfered, never suggested or do this or LA was altogether different. There were times in LA where I was asked to promote a player because they were trying to trade him, and the guy that their team that they were trying to trade him to, the owner of that team was going to be listening that night. Well, Red Kelly found out about that too, and the guy never got on the ice, maybe 2 shifts. I mean, how can I sell this guy to Chicago? But anyway, no, there was never any influence, undue influence like that from Al or anybody else. Al was just such a giant of a man, great personality, quiet. If he barked, if he was upset, I don't recall him ever being upset with me, but there were times when I heard him yell at a player or two. It was just a great guy to be around. He dominated the practice. He made sure that everybody worked as hard as they had to work. Nobody slacked off with Al. They're just the kind of man who knew whether a pat on the back would get things done with you, or he had to try and kick you. You know, by kicking, I don't mean physically kicking you, but by getting you jacked up, just sticking the needle in, whatever he had to do to get you off your butt to work harder.
Just going in a different direction, and again, to basically bringing it to a lot of our younger Islander audience. The Islanders had many characters, and put those in air quotes, real characters. Especially during the Cup years, and many may not know some of the antics that went on. I mean, one of the ones that always, I always would get a kick out of was Billy Smith. I mean, for those that don't know, if you ever went to an Islander practice at Caniac Park and you were waiting there after practice was over and you wanted to see Billy Smith to try to get an autograph, I never seen a man sprint out of a building as fast as he did, jump over bushes, get around people to get to his car to get out. I mean, it was a joke watching. It was hysterical watching him do this. But just give us a little more about Billy Smith, because to me, he was one. If he would have played now, I think he would have been a rock star.
Oh,
Absolutely.
No question.
Rock star.
No doubt. No question, Gary. Smitty came out of a different mold. Smitty, well, as everybody knows who played the game or watched the game, could keep the crease clear. The area behind the net was his. That goal stick was his. Hack and whack. Poke check. He could poke the puck away from a player, poke it off his stick on a breakaway better than any goaltender I've ever seen. But personality-wise, no. Certainly not game day. After some practices, as you point out, if he was going to play the next night, he got into that mode very early. We had a good relationship going back to the LA days because he played there prior to the Islanders. I would get a nod if I didn't want to go to Al or ask about starting goaltender. I could just give Smitty a look and he would nod. And it was almost the same with Mario Lemieux over the years. Mario would acknowledge that, he was able to play where he wouldn't tell anybody what was going on with him. Smitty was a gem. You had Clark Gillies, who was just as easygoing as could be. Bobby Bourne tried to stay right with him and for the most part did. Tonelli was as easygoing. Butchie was out there. Butch, nothing bothered Butchie. I shouldn't really say that, but Butch, Roger Nielsen got a lot of credit for going to the videotape and coaching from tape and watching games and dissecting. Al was doing it, and Al had players do it. Al would send Butch home with videotape, break down their power play, break down their penalty killing, bring it back to me, tell me what you're seeing. Butch, there's a very serious side of Butch. Denny was always serious, Potvin. Easygoing, fun, quiet but fun would be a big Stefan Persson. Billy Carroll was out of this world as far as being a character. Some great stories. He and his accountant, Billy, came out of practice one day. His car was pulled right up in front of the doors at Candiac Park, and the car was full of those styrofoam chips. His accountant had been able to open the sunroof and dump in the chips. So Billy somehow got into the car. We figure it was through the sunroof and got things moved out enough. Drove it to his accountant's home. Somehow got it into the garage, and then opened the doors, and just cleared all the styrofoam chips out on the garage floor. Oh yeah, that team, or those teams, I should say, were just so much fun to be around. On the bus, there were nights when you would bus to Hartford, or you would bus down to Philadelphia for next game. We got to ride the bus at that time, and some of the singing, some of the jokes, some of the things that went on the bus are just hilarious. I guess there was a TV series or made for TV, The Boys on the Bus. The Islander bus was just every bit as good.
Ever a chance you had to break up Bossy and Trottier because of all their antics on the bus or wherever?
Not so much antics on the bus. Those two guys were together all the time. The only time that they came out with their teammates after a game for a bubbly or two was in L.A. Now, whether they figured they were far enough away from home that news wasn't going to get back or not, the two of them. It's quite often referred to as wobbly water or whatever. It was giggly water with those two, not fire water. They would just laugh and laugh and laugh and giggle at one another and say some of the dumbest things, but at least they were with their teammates and enjoying. But like I say, it was only rare, the LA trip every year, that you would see that happen.
Go ahead, Paul. I'm just thinking another one.
Oh, okay. When you were doing some of the player ceremonies for retirement, was it bittersweet for you? Was it a part of you saying goodbye to some of these, the players, not necessarily the person?
No, not really, Paul. I was honored to be asked to do it. I looked at it as a tribute. The fact that I had been around the team, around that franchise, around that player, to know the quality of individual, not just the individual, but stats, things that what he brought to the team, what he meant to the team, what he meant to the fans. Butchie in particular, certainly the Johnny T, the more recent retirements. But going back to Smitty's, there's a picture over here with Deb and Billy and the boys. The Al Arbor one is here. This room has got a lot of memories, a lot of pictures. But the most recent with Johnny T and Butchie, I mentioned to John to Nelly when I knew what the time frame was going to be. So I can't talk that long. I can't. No. I can't go 7 minutes. Well, they ended up going what? I think Butchie outdid him, which shocked me. I mean, on the Saturday the following week, Butchie outdid him, and that shocked me too. Well, it shouldn't have, I guess, but it did at the time. No, I looked upon those events as just so nice to be a part of it all. Just so nice to be given the opportunity to be there when that individual got the recognition that he did.
In continuing that question, and actually thank you for segueing what you did, Paul, because that was what I was going to bring up next, is this. In that light, your own personal feeling, as I was starting to become an Islander fan, obviously Pat LaFontaine was at his peak, was doing amazingly well. And then, of course, the trade happened in 91. His... I guess if you want to say his bad feelings with the organization, with ownership or what have you, came into play. Do you think that looking at it now, just on his domain of time in the organization and what he did in the organization, should he maybe be the next, if they ever would retire another number, would he be the next one?
Yes, he should be. Um, at one time, it was my understanding that any player who was given that honor by the Hockey Hall of Fame would automatically, if they weren't already in the Islanders or had their number retired, it would be done. So yes, in that respect, Pat. But from his talent, what he did for the franchise, what he brought to the franchise, um, by all means. Pierre is another situation that I think the team needs to honor, to respect what he brought to the team. Granted, he wasn't there that long, but the numbers that he put up, the contribution that he made to that hockey team and the franchise, if certainly not a retirement of 77, then the honor, the Hall of Fame thing that they have.
Yeah.
I don't think there's been anybody added to that Hall of Fame in years, to the best of my knowledge or
No,
recollection.
nobody has.
I think certainly, if need be, start there. But a guy like Stefan Persson should be on that
Yeah.
on Hall of Fame. There's some other guys too. But yeah, to get back to where you're going here, Gary, Paul. Yes, Pat LaFontaine should be retired number, honored by the New York Islanders.
Okay. How much hockey did you learn from Bill Torrey?
Over the years, probably more from Cliff Fletcher than Bill.
Okay.
I was a little more attuned to what was going on with the team in Atlanta and what they were looking at as far as building a team and who could complement whom. Bill never played his hand with me as to, but I know he certainly did with Al. They would argue like crazy about who should be on so-and-so's right side or left side. Bill had a great eye for who would complement whom. I mean, could I play between you and Gary? Probably not. But if we moved you to the middle, Paul, and I played the left side, and we just left Gary on the bench, on the other wing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Bless you. Bless you.
yeah, that was Bill's forte.
Yes.
He was very good with that. Bill Torrey was an astute negotiator. Going back to Patty and Pat being traded to Buffalo, anybody that took Bill to the mat on contract didn't stay on Long Island very long. You look at the Bob Bourne deal. Bourne was ready to hold out. See you later, Bob. If you think your value is somewhere where I don't think it is, good luck. Go get him. So Bill, and at this time, keep in mind there's no salary cap. You've got a payroll. They probably had a budget to stay within, but if Bill felt there was a player, if they needed to make a trade, bring somebody in, his best conduit to John O. Pickett was Mrs. Pickett. He could talk to Marilyn. Marilyn Pickett was the hockey fan. John O. was the nuts and bolts, the money to make things happen. So he could say, Marilyn, we need to. Can you work it with John? Can you talk to John about freeing up another 20,000, 50,000, whatever they needed to make a player contract work on a deal? And quite often got it done. Quite often they didn't too, I'm sure. But there are so many stories. There was one night at a Canadian club dinner in Manhattan. Mike Bossy was being honored. I've got Bill Torrey on my right. Denny Potvin is on my left. I was co-emceeing with Brian McFarland, I guess, that year. And anyway, Mike tells the crowd what he made his last year as a New York Islander. And I feel Denny Potvin lean forward, turn like this, looking at Bill, and Bill Torrey next to me is going, oh. Denny had been assured by Bill that he was the highest paid Islander and always would be. And here was Boss making $5,000 more than Denny. And Denny is just livid. And Bill was cringing. It was a good moment.
Wow.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Let's just go a little forward. For those who don't know, my connection with the Islander Booster Club, and in 2016, we hosted a summer convention where we had people come from all over the NHL cities, and we hosted it out in Suffolk County. And of course, we had the honor of having Jiggs be our guest speaker at our main evening function. And when I had the honor of having to go pick you up at LaGuardia that day to come to the hotel, and you said to me, Gary, you're gonna like some guy that's going to be coming and possibly doing the broadcast for the Islanders. You want to just pick up on that story about the guy you actually had to listen to and MSG asked you to talk about, or
when Brendan came in?
Yeah.
I didn't have a major role to play in it. In fact, I can't even say that I had a role, just that I was kind of clued in, tucked in, and said, if you have the time, listen, give this tape a listen. Wow, I was blown away. And we developed a friendship. Yes, he came in after Howie, and he is such a talent, and he is so easy to talk to. At least as a fellow broadcaster, there have been a couple of times, where I have taken it upon myself to get in touch with Brendan and say, I know you're so busy with your network stuff and your Islander games, you probably don't get an opportunity to go back and rewind, listen. But here's what I'm noticing. There's a bit of a redundancy, or there's this creeping in or that creeping in. Next thing I know, it's corrected. It's gone. He is just so talented, so good, so personable. There are a lot of young broadcasters out there trying to emulate what Mike Emmerich did all those years. Brendan has taken the best of Mike and married it with the best of two or three other guys, in my opinion, and has just risen above. He's at that peak, at that level that is head and shoulders over any of the other play-by-play guys with the 32 teams in the league.
And if you actually hear him do baseball as well, because he's doing the Sunday morning games on Apple TV, he is outstanding with that as well.
Yeah. He just celebrated a birthday, last weekend, I guess, and I had the family with him in Washington, and good for him. Yeah, he's a workaholic. There are nights when I've been watching a TNT game and knowing that the Islanders play the next night. There's Brendan. The overnight. Yeah, those red eyes. I had a couple come to mind. At a Friday, I was doing during the Atlanta years. No, wait a minute. No, it was Islander years. Islanders in Edmonton on a Friday night. I've got, I forget who, playing the Boston Bruins in Boston Saturday at 1:00, and Sunday night, Islanders at Colorado. So I red eye Edmonton to Toronto to Boston, and I fall asleep sitting waiting for the flight to Boston. I've gotten to Toronto. Now I've cleared customs. I'm ready to go to Boston, and I'm sitting there in the boarding area, and I'm asleep. A scout for the New York Rangers wakes me up, and he said, I presume you're going to Boston to do the game, Jiggs? Yeah. Better get on the plane here. He said, you better get on the plane. So I did that game in Boston, and then right back on the aircraft to go to Colorado, go to Denver for Sunday night. So I know what Brendan is going through, and I have all the respect in the world. And I think my wife probably sympathizes with his wife, Mary, because Daddy isn't home that much.
No.
We went through it. The girls, I remember, this would be in the in the LA. The season is over, and I hear my oldest one say to her mother, isn't there anywhere he can go? So one set of rules. Mom had her set of rules. I had mine, and the kids.
Jiggs, you showed up when the Islanders were winning Stanley Cups, and then you also got to see some down years as well.
Yeah.
During those down years, I mean, did you always enjoy the broadcast, or did it really start to feel like work?
It was more work during that era, or it felt like work. You were, I mean, you can only sugarcoat a situation so much. And I knew that if I went any further, I couldn't live with myself. Wasn't being honest. Um, we had an ownership situation where there were four different owners, and each one had their own opinion about where the hockey team should be going and what direction, whether they needed a big defenseman or they needed a right winger. This is what the scouts should be looking for. Tick, tick, tick. We had a general manager who has gone on to a pretty good career, either being a GM or president of teams elsewhere, but was put in a situation that he wasn't ready for, and had great difficulty handling, not just the job, but handling the media, or even talking to Eddie and I. He would go out of his way to avoid us. I'm referring, of course, to Don Maloney. Yeah, it was a struggle, a difficult struggle, and I'll fast forward quickly to '95 and my demise. And I told this story at a Booster Club meeting one night on Long Island there with Gary and that great, wonderful group of Islander boosters that get together. I got no support from the New York Islanders when my contract wasn't renewed at Sports Channel. I didn't leave the Islanders. I didn't leave Sports Channel. They pulled the rug out from under me. There was a contract that had been negotiated and agreed to that was never provided for signature, and all of a sudden was off the table. There's a long story involved there as well, but it was off the table, and I got no support from the Islander franchise at that time. So I was just cast to the winds. But hey, all water over the dam or under the bridge, as they say, and enjoyed the time being back, filling in for Howie, filling in for Brendan when I did prior to this recent situation, and hey, all good, great memories.
Any future plans of covering Islander games every once in a while?
No, none whatsoever. I think Mr. Microphone is on the shelf here to stay. I hope so. I hope I have the wherewithal to say, no, I don't do that anymore.
Okay.
Some wonderful memories, some great memorabilia here in the room. I just I can't believe that it lasted as long as it did. My father, when I got the job in Los Angeles with the Kings, couldn't believe it. Said, "There's no money in sports." I wish he had lived beyond 69 years to see what these contracts are like today, or what people are paying for tickets, or even just to park. Yeah, there's a lot of money in sports, Dad. Things have changed.
Yeah, that $5,000 you talked about before with Denny and Mike Bossy. What would that get you now? Maybe a couple of games in the top seats.
Perhaps
Beer or two, maybe.
You might be able to take your wife to an All-Star weekend or a game. You'd have to decide whether you're going to the game or the skills competition, one or the other. Couldn't do both.
Yeah, exactly. Paul?
I was going to give you a question, Gary. Go ahead.
Oh, well, yeah, just going back, like as you said, your departure, but you got to go back and work with Bill Torrey again down in Florida. You had moved down there, and I know I got to see you a couple of times when the Islanders were down there. We came up to visit, came down to visit. How was the difference of covering games? Obviously you did in LA, but in South Florida, close to home, back with Bill Torrey. I assume it was just almost like you never left.
It was, and what was even as much fun or more, getting to know Brian Murray. I'd known Brian as a general manager of the opposition, but never worked with Brian or been around Brian, and uh, he would. What a great guy! What a Brian. The late Brian Murray had a sense of humor that was second to none. Uh, was astute, as good a negotiator too, and good with players. He could crack a joke with him, and then all of a sudden he could snap that whip, and get the guy back in line. Uh, I really enjoyed Bill. Um, the most enjoyable thing overall would be working with Randy Moeller. I knew Moles as a player, both in Quebec, Buffalo, and with the Rangers. In fact, one of those neutral site games was Atlanta and Buffalo in Minneapolis. This is after the North Stars had moved to Dallas, and downtown hotel. And I'm sitting there, and who sits down at the table with me that morning? It was Randy. And hey, I watch all your games. How you doing? Tick, tick, tick. Hey, Red Deer. Bang, bang, bang. And now we end up working together. And it was just, I mean, he is one of the funniest human beings, both on and off the air. Just a great, great human being. The 5 years with the Panthers was an excellent way to finish up a career. It was fun. It made everything fun again.
You still golfing?
I haven't hit a golf ball since May. All my golf partners have headed north. I'm here alone, although every time I kind of, in and out of the community, I see two or three people playing by themselves. And maybe I should go down to the pro shop and get out and play. But it's so hot, Gary. You'd have to.
It's hurricane season.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's around the corner on us too. But it's a matter of getting there before the sun comes up.
Right.
Just to 96, 97 degrees. I was in the pro shop yesterday afternoon, and a gentleman came in and wanted a rain check. And I kind of looked around, and he said, well, my wife almost passed out. He said, we only played 4 holes and paid for 18. Can we come back again? And yeah, there was no breeze yesterday. It was just, it was taxing.
Okay. Have you been able to watch any of the current Islanders? The games.
The games? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my wife will tell you that I haven't cut the cord. I thought I had or tried to in the lockout year. But I watch a lot of games. Maybe I don't watch the entire game when they're on the West Coast, but I certainly see quite a bit of it. Yeah. Give
me your thoughts on the Islanders and Lou Lamoriello.
Well, Lou, I have the greatest respect for Lou. His past record, wherever he's been, I know all the stories about how difficult some people find it to work for Lou, and how controlling he has been in some cases. But he's been successful too, and it's hard to knock that. You just can't knock what he's done in the past. I know there are people who say the past is the past. We've got to deal with the present. We've got to get younger, faster, tick, tick, tick. But he evaluates talent very, very well. And I think, given the givens, had number 13 been able to stay healthy, the trade for Bo Horvat and what Matt and Bo showed us early on prior to the injury, I think Wallstrom. Had Wallstrom been healthy all year, and these are all intangibles. I mean, every team in the league goes through injury situations. You look at how banged up the Panthers were in their series against the Vegas Golden Knights. There's a toll taken. It's a matter of who can stay the healthiest. But I think somewhere between now and the beginning of the season, I think you're going to see the addition of somebody that can finish, can score that goal. It's not going to win every game, but it's going to give you the 5 or 6 more wins, or the potential to be more dominant at playoff time. But there's so many if factors when it comes to health and conditioning. This is one of the things, going back to the Islanders Stanley Cup years. I talk all the time about the contribution made by Ron Waskey, who was the head trainer. We had a trainer, we had an equipment manager. There was nobody else. But Ron had a program that the guys over the course of the 6 months of the season, well, let me just take that back. By the first week in April, and he tested 3 times. The fourth, I believe, was the first week in April. This was for body fat conditioning, tick, 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 all the things that were required for conditioning. You had a week, 2 weeks, maybe to bring that. No, let me back up. It was the middle of March, and you had a deadline of April to be at this level from mid-March to the first week in April, leading up to playoff time. Conditioning, stretching were the most important things with Ron, and it paid off. That team, yeah, there were a few injuries from time to time, and especially as they made the drive for the fifth one, and that was a matter of having played nearly 100 games at the highest level that the game can be played at. That does take a toll on the body, but what Ron did, the contribution and the physical fitness that was an achievement, a goal set and achieved by every player, was very, very important to winning.
Just bringing that into continuation. When you look at, again, Paul's a little younger than you and I are, but I mean, I remember, like watching Met games in the 60s and the 70s. I remember looking at the stats for Tom Seaver. He would throw 170 pitches in a game or whatever. That was common. It was normal. They did it every time. And you see how baseball now is so, it has such borders on what athletes are allowed to do. And to me, athletes today are definitely bigger, stronger, faster. All these things, all these other attributes that they know are better than these guys that play in the 70s, but they limit them.
Yeah. His pitch count is getting up there. The last game he only threw 75.
But do you think, and now obviously hockey also, the players are getting bigger and stronger, faster, but I think what you're just saying is true, that, what Ron Waskey did, and I don't know if a lot of other trainers were really as heavy into the conditioning in that as he was, but he was setting a tone to what trainers and things do 50 years, later, and that that they're so decompensated, they're so into everything, and of course it's a 12-month-a-year business now.
Absolutely.
Where guys,
used to be you came to training camp to get into condition to go play the game. Right. Exactly. Now you better show up ready to play the game. And players today have their own personal trainers in a lot of cases. They train so heavily in the off season, work on this, working on whatever muscle set. It is an altogether different animal than it was back then. I remember the first time I saw a player riding a bike after a game. So what is going on here? Because you've got the equipment off, you got in the shower, trainers packed or equipment guys packed up your bag, you were on the bus, or if you were at home, you were headed for somewhere to have a couple of libations, get that fluid back into your body. But now the lactic acid, traveling with Herb Brooks is when it first was pointed out to me just how important post-game activity, post-game conditioning is to today's hockey player. This is what you have to do to maintain that certain level. But Herb also pointed out that he thought that players overtrained. He said, it's like a racehorse. He said racehorses are so tight, so muscular. Any little, they can crack a bone. This happens, and they're put down. Well, you're not going to put down a hockey player, but the body doesn't get a chance to relax or move. Players take 2-3 weeks maybe after the season ends, where the playoffs are over for them, and then right back at it. And Herb pointed out to me several times that he just felt players were over conditioned. That's why they got hurt. Some guys pulled muscles, groin issues, that kind of thing.
So, I got everything soaked up here. I'm Gary, you got anything or?
No, I mean, like as many people know, and I've said it on here, and I've said it all times. When I started doing radio, Jiggs was my first guest on my first night on, and whenever I needed, somebody, I'd always give a call. Hey, Jiggs, can you make it? And he'd be like, just tell me when and where. That's it. So I am honored to call him my friend, and I have for a long, long time. And he was always good with the Booster Club with us when I was involved. And it's great. Again, it's great to see you. You look fantastic, Jiggs.
Thanks, Gary.
And I'm just so glad you were able to do this with us.
I am too. Thank you for the invitation. Paul, Gary, this is any chance to talk hockey, and especially Islanders hockey. But there's an old-fashioned cassette recorder here somewhere that is supposed to be in use. I'm supposed to be putting things down or into this tape or on tape to maybe write a book eventually. My two girls have given me books on how to write a book. My wife has been on my case. You've got to write your book.
Yes, you do.
Who's I talking? I was talking to somebody last week. They said, Kenny Albert's got a book coming out in October. Does he really? Oh, and Kenny's how old and been in the league? Well, someday, maybe. Someday. I can't take all these memories with me. I've got to leave them for the kids somewhere. Maybe I'll get to it.
That would be outstanding, Jiggs.
But Gary, it's always, whenever you need me, you know how I feel about you, how I feel about the Booster Club, the Islanders over the years. Good times, bad times, but rewarding times always. And this new building, the UBS Arena, the franchise, the ownership, good things are on the horizon. I think I feel it that it's fans are going to be rewarded here in the very near future.
I hope so.
Gotta be.
I would just love to say thank you so much for coming on. There's no better time than the present, Jiggs. Get on that book. Get on that book. Again, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real treat and an honor for myself. I definitely learned some stuff that I had never even heard of or would even think about. Just tremendously honored for bringing you on and for you coming on and everything else for all the Islander fans here tonight.
Pleasure was all mine. Thank you for the invite. Anytime.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of our show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Isles Talk. Follow us on Facebook, and please hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Gary, where can they find you?
Well, you took our names off here, but at IslesMet63 on Twitter. I don't tweet as much as I used to, but definitely let us know what you thought about the show tonight. And I know Paul's trying to get some other things going to give some more 50 memories as the summer goes along.
Yeah, and next week, I think I'm going to bring back Shane Malloy. We're going to cover the draft a little bit. And then a week after that, I think we're going to go back, celebrating 50 years of Islanders hockey. I think we're going to probably have fish sticks for dinner during that show. So we'll see what we can hit for that one. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming on. We'll see you next week, and let's go Islanders.